All right, welcome everybody to the Real Talk Sports Show. I'm your host, the Minister Jonathan Simmons, and we thank God for those of you who are watching us here live on Facebook Live, also are broadcasting on WIGO and 1570 Atlanta's Incredible Radio. We thank God for those of you who are listening and tuned in to us in that regard. We're also very, very thankful to all those of you watching on the replay on Periscope. Thank you so much. We bless you and appreciate each and every one of you. Well, it is another week of sports, another big weekend with lots of stuff going on. We wish we had more positive things to talk about, but unfortunately, still looming in the background of most sports is the COVID-19. So we are going to get some COVID-19 updates from high school football, from college football. Take a look also at what's happening in the pros. Also want to take a look at what's happening right here in Atlanta in baseball. Breaking news with the Braves as the COVID-19 continues to make an impact on how teams are going to be able to go about their business in this truncated or attempted truncated season of 2020. So it's going to be very, very interesting, as the teams proceed on. Because here's the thing I think that everybody's looking at here as we get information about what certain colleges are doing, what the pro teams are doing. We can certainly see that, like I said again, the COVID-19 has had a huge impact, and really the question is going to be is that really who's going to play this year, and how are they going to go about playing? That's one of the questions we've asked over the last couple of weeks, and man, it's crazy because it literally changes day by day, so that's on popping up on the screen. Here's our big question: with the recent spike in coronavirus cases, should high school sports even be played in 2020? And hopefully in just a little bit we'll have on one of our guests who's going to talk about that. She is an administrator in Atlanta Public Schools in the athletic department. We look forward to having Candace Mitchell on with us in just a little bit. Also look forward to bringing our buddy Brian Jones back into the building, as Brian hopefully will talk to us about, again, all of the things that are going on with the Bravos. So we look forward to having him come on the program and talk to us about the Braves and kind of what he thinks is going to happen with them this year, because a couple of key players have tested positive for the COVID virus, including future Hall of Famer Freddie Freeman has tested positive for coronavirus. And also today we found out that a guy who's really been clutch for the Braves for years, especially his last few years, Nick Markakis, has said, "I'm out for the season." So what do you guys think? How our team's going to do it? Let's again pop up the Braves question. How are the Braves going to be able to compete for a title? Again, with top players like Freddie Freeman having done tested positive already, Nick Markakis opting out already. That's really the question. How are these guys going to go forward and be able to make something out of the season? Because really, the baseball season this year is a sprint. It's not a marathon. Usually, it's a 162 game season, and teams have a lot of opportunity to come back. I mean, we saw last year the world champion Marlins. I think they were 17 or 18 games under 500 before they made their run and found themselves in the World Series, and not only in the World Series but winning the World Series. So that's the big question we're going to ask Brian when he comes on. How are the Braves going to be able to compete for a title with top players like Freddie Freeman testing positive, and again Nick Markakis already saying that he's out for the season. So again, your thoughts, your comments. Love to have you guys chime in here on the broadcast with us. We are going to put up the link on how to join us in just a moment in the comment section. I'm going to pop that on, so if you guys do want to be a part of the broadcast, you can do so. Again, you're listening to the Real Talk Sports Show here on Atlanta's Incredible Radio, WIGO 1570 on the AM dial. You also can find us broadcasting to you on all these portals. So we're on realtalksports.net. We're also on WIGOM.com. We're also on TuneIn Radio. We're on Periscope, which is Twitter TV, and we're also on the WIGOM.com website. If you go to their Watch Live Now page, you will see us on there right now. So yeah, man, it is like I said, great day. I tell you, when I came home, the beautiful thing, I'm checking here on Facebook to make sure our volume is good. The beautiful thing is that when I came home, the great thing about being in the summertime is it stays light a long time. And I don't know about you, man, but I love the fact that it is light to almost 9 o'clock. So I come in here and the sunshine is bathing you here, and they're allegedly telling us that evidently that COVID 19 does not like the heat. So thank God that we have all this warm weather here to help us fight off the coronavirus. And speaking of that, breaking news here in Atlanta, the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, not only she herself tested and received a positive test on coronavirus, her husband and I guess their children as well. So our prayers go out to her. As you know, she's been kind of on the front lines with all the stuff that's been going on here in Atlanta. So we certainly pray that that she will have a speedy recovery. And again, for those of you who have been in the cave, Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms suffering from the coronavirus. Again, we hope and pray that she'll be able to recover quickly from this. And you know, if you think it's a joke, if you think this is kind of something to play with, I can assure you, ma'am and sir, when you see the mayors of cities having coronavirus, when you see all these different athletes, is letting you know that contrary to popular belief, it's just not a poor person's disease. Contrary to popular belief, it's not just a brown person's disease, because we do know that it appears that African Americans and Hispanics are getting it at a little bit higher rate, even though technically there are more basic Caucasian people that have the disease. It's affecting percentage-wise the black and Hispanic community at almost a 3-to-1 rate over the percentage that's affecting the white community. But nevertheless, everybody's getting it. Okay, so all the stuff that they told us at the beginning about who can't get it, kids can't get it, it only affects old people, then people for a while, it only affects black people, that's wrong. It's affecting all types of people. So I would say to you, please, ma'am, please, sir, I'm not going to say keep you behind the house, because that's what people were saying before, just stay inside. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you are a young person, if you don't necessarily know people who have the coronavirus, then you're wearing a mask and you're doing things that are preventive, not necessarily to protect yourself, but you don't know you could be a carrier of disease. You could be one of those people that are asymptomatic and walking around shaking your backside, partying like a rock star, and you're spreading the COVID wherever you go like a trail of bad breadcrumbs. So I'll just say to you, please, ma'am, please, sir, just control yourself. Wear a mask. We're not forcing you. Just, you're trying to help people. Remember that. So anyway, that's my public service announcement. Again, we're getting ready to bring our guest in for the rest of the evening. Again, our question is, first of all, are we really going to be able to play? And how are the Braves going to be able to play this season with all the coronavirus and things that are attacking them? Because Nick Markakis has been a key part of that team for the last few years since he came here in 2016. And he said for personal reasons, the family reasons, he is not opting to play this year for the Atlanta Braves. Now, I'm going to pull up here and look at some of his stats here, some of the numbers here. Let's go here to look at him. First of all, let's take a peek at his comments. It says Nick Markakis decisions. He says no fans, routines disrupted. Freddie Freeman himself has an illness. All these things have really had an effect on the Braves' sensibility. Markakis said he talked to Freddie Freeman for a while, because Freddie, like I said again, has been a stalwart on the team for over a decade. And I think once he learned that Freddie had what he had, he said, you know, I'm out. And Markakis, like I said again, him being out, let me just give you his numbers over the last 2 years. 2018, Markakis, big year, 623 at-bats for the Bravos. He had scored 78 runs, 185 hits is one of his best seasons, 93 RBIs, and a 297 batting average. And he was an all-star that year. So big career for Nick Markakis, a guy in his mid-30s, but showing he's still got it going on for Atlanta. And even last year, 2019, still batted 285 with 62 RBIs and 61 runs scored. So this is a guy who is a key factor in the Braves, you know, in what the Braves do. So without him being there, only a 50-game stretch. Freddie Freeman also, like I said, suffering from COVID and trying to recover now. Not sure what the Braves are going to be able to do. And matter of fact, even Braves manager Brian Schnittker, you know, if you look at him in the press conference, a couple of guys have reported that he's looked a little like, yeah, I don't know, because he's actually in that age bracket where it's kind of a high risk. So what do you guys think? How the Braves going to pan out this year? You can. I'm going to go ahead and put the link here on to the comment section, so you guys actually can cut and paste the link. And what you can do is that'll be like you actually calling the show. Since we don't have a call-in line, if you pop in here on this line, which is about to pop up right now, bam, there it is. It's now in the stream. And there's right there. That is the link for those of you on Facebook. It's the same link. You click on that link, we'll put you into the studio. And the cool thing is, you can opt not to be on the studio at all. You can just put yourself in a situation where you have no video, just audio, and it'll be like a phone call. So cool stuff there going on. And we appreciate all those of you again who are watching us on this broadcast, as we broadcast to you live here from the lockdown living room here, just outside Atlanta, Georgia, about 20 miles south of Atlanta, Georgia. So that's where you are. Like it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Hopefully you guys had a wonderful 4th of July. What did you guys do? Love to see in your comments here. What did you guys do? Did you barbecue? Did you practice any kind of social distancing? Did you say, look, man, it's 4th of July. We out here cooking. It's hot. Corona can't get me. I saw a lot of people out on the lakes, on beaches. They were doing all kind of water sports. It didn't appear that they were doing social distancing. So hopefully and prayerfully, they already know that crew that they're in, nobody has the corona. So I'm hoping. But 4th of July, like I said, people are out having a good time. So what you guys do, let me know. You can put it in the comments. We'll pop it up on Facebook Live. Again, you're watching and listening to the Real Talk Sports Show as we broadcast to you on Atlanta's Incredible Radio, WIGO 1570 on the dial. You also check us out on Facebook Live. You also are checking us out on Twitter TV, which in fact is Periscope. And again, we appreciate all those of you who are checking us out on the broadcast. We are going to, again, check out where our guests are. It looks like everybody's kind of hiding out. So we look forward to getting them into the studio very, very shortly with us so we can continue on with the broadcast here. Again, as we broadcast to you from right outside of Atlanta, Georgia, Atlanta's Incredible Radio, WIGO 1570 on the dial. And again, like I said, we appreciate all those of you who have tuned into the broadcast to check us out, man. It's just a beautiful thing, man. I'm just happy to be on here broadcasting and just taking another day and checking out all the good things that are going on in the neighborhood. All right, so high school sports, GHSA has announced that they're going to be involved in the middle of it. So we look forward to, again, seeing the kids potentially play some high school football this year. I don't know what your thoughts are. I asked the question earlier. What is your sensibility? Do you think that the high school kids should come out and play? What sports do you think they should play with this big spike in COVID-19? Should high school sports play at all in 2020? And if so, what sports should be played? That's the big question that we are asking here at this point. So again, we appreciate all those of you who are watching the broadcast as we try to get our guests set up here and make sure that they're on the air with us. Hopefully and prayerfully we'll have them on in just a minute. Mr. Brian Jones to talk to us a little bit about Braves baseball, and also hopefully that the lovely Miss Candace Mitchell will be joining us as well here on the broadcast as we talk about, like I said, really how COVID-19 has affected everything. Has affected high school sports, has affected college sports. There's so much stuff going on, and a lot of this, I believe, is really, I think all of you know, is driven by money. We had the announcement earlier today that the Ivy League, the complete Ivy League, have said, we're shutting it down, boys. We're not trying to play at all. We're not going to do it. We're not going to be playing any games whatsoever. So it's interesting that the Ivy League does it. Well, of course, I think one of the reasons why the Ivy League is able to do it is, in fact, because, like they say, size does matter. And in the case of size, I'm talking about the size of the endowment, not how they're endowed. Let's get it straight. Keep it above board. The size of their monetary endowment of the schools make it such that, first of all, these guys don't really compete in any bowl games, so they don't have to go out here and raise all this money for scholarships and so forth to fund the schools. All of these schools have multi-billion-dollar endowments for the schools, so they don't need the money. So consequently, guess what they decide? They made a pure health decision, and to some degree a PR decision, because none of these guys that have all these wealthy kids want to get sued by some very wealthy parents, many of them lawyers and folks that can bring some heat on the school. So they're not trying to do that. For that reason, number two, they can just, like I said, look at it from a health reason. Why? Because they don't have to spend the money to make sure that the school stays in operation, which I have to tell you, boys and girls, as we're seeing a lot of schools depend heavily on that money that they get from football and from high school to be able to keep things going on. Well, we're going to grab our first guest for the evening. We're going to take a little quick break, and then we'll be back. Brian Jones, we're going to rehash our conversation about what is happening with the Bravos. Are they going to be able to make some noise here? You're listening to the Real Talk Sports Show. We broadcast to you right here live on Atlanta's Incredible Radio, WIGO 1570, and also on Periscope, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and WIGOM.com. All right, let's take a look at some of the guests who have graced the microphones of the Real Talk Sports Show.
This is OJ Howard with Real Talk Sports.
What's up, guys? This is Tim Tebow. You're listening to Real Talk Sports.
This is Charles Woodson. Let me grab the mic. You ready? This is Charles Woodson with Real Talk Sports. Hey, it's your boy JB Smooth with Real Talk Sports.
That's my man JB Smooth. Those are some of the people that we have been able to interview here on red carpet, blue carpet, green carpet. We've been able over the years to be on the scene and do some great interviews. So from time to time, we're going to have a little archive replay so you guys can see some of the folks that we have been able to talk to here on air. One of the guys that has been a great friend of our show, he has covered a myriad of sports, but right now he's doing stuff with pop culture, also still involved with 24/7 Sports, and of course covers our Atlanta Braves. Mr. Brian Jones, welcome back to the show, kind sir.
Always a pleasure, Jonathan. Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey man, listen, it's good to have you back on, man. And I was talking to people earlier. This whole thing, man, with the COVID-19 has just been incredible as far as how it's really affecting everything. And what we're seeing right now, how it affects the Braves. As Nick Markakis, I've mentioned a couple of times, the broadcast officially mentioned, I ain't playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's one of two Braves players that's opted out not to play this upcoming season. Him and Felix Hernandez just signed a minor league contract with the Braves earlier this year. It's not surprising, and General Manager Alex Antopoulos pretty much talked about how he was not surprised by how both of those players decided to opt out. Nick Markakis talked to Freddie Freeman, who tested positive for COVID-19, and that was one of the reasons that he decided not to play this season, because at this point of his career, he's on the verge of retiring. He doesn't need the money. He just wants to go out there and win. But based on everything that's going on right now, he thought it'd be best for him and his family just to sit out this season and be ready for 2021. As for Felix Hernandez, he signed a one-year deal. He was just trying to make the team because, again, it was a minor league contract. So we're not sure if we'll see Felix Hernandez in Major League Baseball the following in 2021. So it's not surprising. You may see, I don't really expect to see any other Braves players opt out. There may be some other Braves players that test positive for COVID-19 as the weeks move on and as they get started with the 2020 season. But as of right now, I think they're pretty much in good shape. Even though Freddie Freeman is a loss, it looks like they'll get him back in the early stages of the season. You don't want to lose someone like Freddie Freeman, but because the Braves are very young, very talented, and have pretty good depth at all their positions, they should be okay once the season begins.
Yeah, so it sounds like again, them being a young team, that's going to be a big key for them. Allowing them to get out there and not be as worried. First of all, if a guy does get sick, you're pretty confident that a younger player is going to be able to not just recover, but recover well enough to be able to get back out there and play. Being very young, having strong immune system. Of course, all these guys are world-class athletes, so certainly that puts them in a position where they're getting the best of foods. I'm sure they're getting the best of vitamins and things like that. So I think that you're right. Having the younger players is going to be a real big key as far as the Braves going forward. Because Brian, let's face it, man. This is a sprint. This is not a marathon. Usually, baseball season, 162 games. You got 50 games, make or break.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. These teams, obviously, they're used to playing a longer season, where it's 162 games. Now they're in the situation where it starts in July and it ends at the end of September. So for the Braves, it's not going to be easy for them because they're not going to have too many days off, at least for the start of the season. I think in the few weeks after the season begins, they'll start to get some breaks. But towards the end of the season, they're really not going to have many days off. So, and they can't afford to go on these. None of these MLB teams can afford to go on these losing streaks because, again, you only have 60 games. So for the Braves, in order to reach the playoffs, they're going to have to win at least 35 of those 60 games, I would think. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. I think the Braves are they're in a good spot. They have a bunch of talent all over the roster. And they're playing in a pretty competitive NL East division. They start off the season playing the Mets in New York. The Phillies are going to be a pretty competitive team. And obviously with the Washington Nationals being the World Series champions, they're going to give the Braves a run for their money. But it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it, and I do think the Braves have a chance to have a very successful 2020 season.
Yes, it looks like they've stack loaded it kind of like they used to do, where they have most of the teams from the same division and region playing a lot of games. I think like the Braves have to play, if I'm not mistaken, something like 20 of their first 35 games or so are going to be primarily against divisional or quote-unquote regional opponents. So yeah, you're going to know pretty much after that first third of the season where you are. And that seems strange. You're talking about only playing 15, 20 games and being a third into your season, but that is kind of where you are.
Yeah, their schedule plays out as they're obviously going to play their divisional opponents, and then they'll play the corresponding division in the American League. So they'll play the AL East. They'll play the Yankees. They'll play the Tampa Bay Rays, Boston Red Sox, Baltimore Orioles. So again, that's also a very competitive division. So I think in the early stages of the season, we're going to see how good this Braves team will be. I think based on the way they progressed the last two seasons and what they added so far in the offseason, I think they've done enough to where they can at least make the playoffs and possibly a World Series run. But again, it all depends on if Freddie Freeman is back with the team at the start of the season. I think he will be. If not, then I think he'll miss a few games. But it looks like, again, he's getting better as the days go by, and it's just a matter of him being cleared to take part in workouts and be with the team before the season begins. But I do think, even if he's not there, the Braves do have enough firepower offensively and defensively to get things done.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, they have a good team. This is a team that many people felt, was a World Series caliber team. Certainly blew an opportunity to go, losing in a, typical Atlanta fashion in a game of 5 here in Atlanta. So we know the team is stacked, and certainly we know the big gun is Mr. Excitement here, probably in the National League. So we look forward for him to Mr. Ronald Acuna Jr. We look for him to put up some numbers. Now, there were some people thinking he could be as much as a 40-40 guy. I want to say 40-40 for those of you who are not big baseball fans, 40 home runs, 40 steals. And some people thought if things went just right, he could be a 50-50 guy. But certainly right now, those numbers, I think, realistically, if we could get 20-20, 20 homers, 20 steals in 50 games, I think that would be enough for the Braves to really kind of threaten to be a World Series contender again this year, no doubt.
Yeah, Ronald Acuna is becoming a star in pretty much in all of Major League Baseball. He's been compared to guys like Mike Trout, who's obviously the face of MLB, and then Ken Griffey Jr. for what he was able to do in the 90s and the 2000s. And he's just a guy that he is eventually going to be the franchise, I think. Freddie Freeman is that guy right now, but Ronald Acuna is right there behind him. And even a guy like Ozzie Albies, who bats right behind Ronald Acuna, really had a great 2020 season, won the Silver Slugger Award for second baseman. So those two guys make a good 1-2 combination in the lineup. So again, it just comes down to the Braves' talent. They've done a good job of developing these players over the last few years, signing international players, developing the farm system. You have guys like Austin Riley, Johan Camargo. They added Marcell Ozuna, who did some damage against the Braves last year in the playoffs when he was a member of the Cardinals. So this lineup I really do like, even without Freddie Freeman out of action. If the season starts and Freddie Freeman's out, they have some options there at first base. They can move Riley from third to first. They also have Adam Duvall, who's a good utility guy. Even Charlie Culberson, he can play any position. So again, the Braves have a number of talented individuals, And I do think that, again, they should be able to win 40 to 45 games this year and make a run in the playoffs.
Yeah, no doubt. Like I said, this is a team that is set up to win and win now. They have all the potential here. And the other thing too about it is everybody talks about the fact that when you have young pitchers, these guys are not really that good about pitching a lot of innings. You have virtually no spring training, so the fact that the Braves have a lot of young arms stacked up in that bullpen, it definitely should make them a very formidable player in this short 50-game sprint. So like I said, man, we look forward to it. It should be great stuff. Listen, man, we're going to continue on with the conversation, but we always like to make sure we get the proper introduction. We do it at the end, but we want to do it up front. Tell people again who you are one more time and how they can find out more about you and what you do, Mr. Brian Jones.
Yeah, I'm the trending sports writer for popculture.com. You can find my work at popculture.com/sports. You can also find me on Twitter. That's at @BrianJones_PC. And for any trending or entertainment news, you can go to popculture.com. I also host a podcast. It's called Always Football Season. You can find that anywhere you get your podcast. And I also have a Facebook page for that. You go to facebook.com/alwaysfootballseason.
Yeah, man. So, again, if you want to know a little bit of everything, Brian's got it. Like I said, pop culture. And here's the thing. Right now, entertainment is so intertwined with sports. And it has been that way really for about the last 25 or 30 years, with the whole advent of Michael Jordan and doing the things that he did, which was very well chronicled, as we saw in the Last Dance. We saw how, he was really kind of the first, especially African-American athlete, to really have such a huge crossover presence and being this global worldwide figure. And of course, it continued on with the late Kobe Bryant, Tiger Woods. So many people have kind of just, really kind of been in the marketplace where they are, promoting goods and services and products. And of course, you have some guys like LeBron who are now have this huge entertainment conglomerate that he's building. So yeah, man, definitely it's all about the culture now, and especially with the protests and some of the social justice issues that are going on right now too. That's just a huge thing.
Yeah, and right now, in terms of sports and entertainment and going on with pop culture, NASCAR's been one of the big topics of discussion, specifically with Bubba Wallace and everything that he's been going through. He just signed a deal with Beats by Dre. And then again, with Colin Kaepernick, everything that's going on with him. He's going to have a docuseries that he's going to be coming out with soon. And there's also going to be a Netflix series featuring him that's going to come out in the near future. So there's a lot going on in terms of sports and pop culture, even though sports aren't being played. But slowly but surely they'll return. Major League Soccer is slated to return starting tomorrow. Games will be played with the MLS's back tournament. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. And then as the weeks go on, as the NBA returns to play, as well as Major League Baseball, and then next month we'll see what the NFL does. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. That will be definitely, people will be talking about sports slowly but surely returning. So there's, again, a lot going on in terms of sports and entertainment and pop culture. And, again, be sure to check out popculture.com for all the latest.
Well, there's right there Brian Jones letting you know that he's got the heartbeat and the pulse of not only sports but pop culture, because again, they intertwine all the time. We got, certainly we can just think of all the actors and actresses who have, well, more so actresses. We don't have too many actors dating any female sports stars for the most part, but we do have a lot of, as you guys know, especially basketball players, that kind of fond of those gals in the entertainment business. So yeah, we got that going on, man. And it's just so much happening. And again, with the whole social justice piece, with so many people from both of those sectors, really having an involvement that really we haven't seen since the civil rights era. Even I'm old, but I was actually too little to kind of remember, how big of an impact that Harry Belafonte and the late Kirk Douglas and people like that had in making the civil rights movement something that had impact in this country. So yeah, man, it's just almost like the perfect storm. People have been locked up in their house for like 2-3 months. You got a pandemic scaring people half to death, and then you have a situation where you have all of this police brutality and all the other things that have gone on for years as far as systemic racism that's now just boiled over, man, like a pot that you left on too long on that one of those electric burners. So yeah, you're going to be a busy man, Brian, for a while, I think.
Yeah, one of the things that's going to be interesting to watch as these sports, specifically with the NFL and even the NBA and even the WNBA, once they return, is how um, they are able to put in the Black Lives Matter movement into the games this upcoming season. The NFL has talked about having a national anthem, kind of like a national anthem that's talking about the Black Lives Matter movement. The NBA wants to do something. The WNBA is looking to do something as well. Um, the Atlanta Dream, the owner Kelly Loeffler, who's also a senator, has talked about being against the WNBA doing anything with the Black Lives Matter movement. So that's been a interesting topic for discussion for these last few days. So I think that's going to be one thing we're definitely going to keep an eye on is the Black Lives Matter movement, because it's not going to go away. Based on that, everything that has happened, these last few weeks, and I got to talk to Carrie Champion about this, who used to be a host for ESPN and now is going to have her own show on Vice. And I think it's different this time around because these issues have always been around, but the reason that it's different is just the fact that people have been at home. They've been able to pay attention to everything that's going on, specifically with George Floyd. So it's led to people start taking action. No matter what color you are, black, white, Hispanic, a lot of people are starting to take notice of the racial and social injustice that is going on. And even though the protests may have slowed down a little bit, it's not going to stop, and it's going to bleed over to what you see in the NFL, in the NBA, maybe in Major League Baseball, even though that hasn't really been talked about. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see how these leagues and how these teams are able to support the Black Lives Matter movement for their respective seasons.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. So this is something where I kind of have this question. I don't know if I'll be able to put this on the screen so people can see who are watching. But my big question is that the Senator Kelly Loeffler, and I'll probably spell her name incorrectly, so Ms. Loeffler, if you see it up there, sorry, my spelling might not be the best. But do you think that she's been given kind of a pass? Because, when I look at some of the statements she's made, so there was an interview that also floating around there on social media where she was asked about, gun owners, and she basically said that black people shouldn't own guns lest things turn into a mob rule, but it was basically okay for white people to have guns. Okay, so we have that problem. Number two, Kelly Loeffler is part of the same group of 100 U.S. senators that back on January 29th, where I was heading down to cover the week of the Super Bowl, they were told in a closed-door meeting that, hey, this coronavirus is not just a serious strain of the flu. This is something that could be a serious situation, even an epidemic or pandemic. What did Ms. Loeffler do? A lot of people may or may not know that she is married to So what she decided to do is that she got with her husband and they pulled out millions of dollars of their own personal investment in the stock market before everything went in the tank and crashed. We had not one senator say anything about the meeting. Now people will say, oh brother, it was a closed door meeting, they weren't supposed to. This is something where this is why we elect these people, that regardless of what the president might say or governor, if they think there's something going to be affect the people that voted them in, that it'd be something they're concerned about. Oh, that's right, Ms. Loeffler wasn't voted in, she was appointed in. How about that? So now, do you think that she's getting a pass? I mean, is it because that she's a woman owner? Is it because she's a white woman that she doesn't get the same type of fire and brimstone that if it was a white man? Because I can assure you, if this was a white male owner that made those statements, that guy would probably have been just like Donald Sterling, the old owners of the Clippers. They might have forced him to resign. So you think she's getting a pass, or?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I wouldn't rule that out because she purchased the team in 2011, and I think the WNBA responded. I haven't got a chance to read it, but she was basically saying that the WNBA doesn't need as much politics and just needs more basketball along those lines. So she very well could be getting a pass because of her being a female owner. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I think this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out because I know there are a few players that are asking her to step down as the owner because of her comments. And I think the more pressure that you see from players to ask the league to do that, then you might see something like what you saw from Donald Sterling 6 years ago. Again, she might be getting a pass now, but I think if this intensifies in the next few days, going into next week, then we could see a change when it comes to the Atlanta Dream ownership.
Yeah, I'm just saying, man. I think there's going to be some huge pressure on them. Speaking also of the WNBA, I saw something on Twitter that we tweeted. You guys can follow me at Real Talk Sports 7. Check me out there. That's where you are. Matter of fact, I'll put that up so you guys can see it. You also can follow me personally at Minister J Sim. Yes, I am in fact a real live minister. That's why it says it on the screen there. I am a real guy, and I did not get my ministerial license online. I actually got the old-fashioned way. But anyway, yeah. So this is something that we saw. We got a tweet from WNBA. A WNBA player basically tweeted what the kind of bubble facilities look like, and what she showed was something that looked like the old washer and dryer combos that we had when we were like in the projects as kids growing up. I mean, dude, they look like something that you would never expect from a professional team. So you kind of wonder now, what is the sensibility with the WNBA, with them being on a much closer and tighter budget than some of the other teams? Are they really ready to handle this bubble and give the players the type of protection and the type of surroundings they need to be able to play a season where they're going to be away from their family the whole season?
I think the biggest issue when it comes to these leagues playing in a pandemic is the pandemic. It's so unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen in the next day, in the next week, in the next month. So I think these leagues, the WNBA, NBA, MLB, they're just playing it by ear. MLB is having their issues with players and teams testing players, and some of these teams have to close down their facilities because they don't have the test results in time. So the WNBA is probably in that same boat where they might say they're ready, but they're not as ready as players want them to be. And so when you look at the NBA, Adam Silver has talked about they may have to shut things down because of the growing cases in Orlando. It's really going to be intriguing to see how everything plays out, because it's not so much about yes, you would like to see these leagues be more prepared, but it's just that unpredictability of this virus has led to these leagues not being 100% sure what the next step is. I think, again, they're just playing this by ear. They're just hoping things get better in the next few days. For WNBA, I think they're as prepared as they could be. You would like to see them more prepared, but I think all these leagues are doing the best they can in the circumstances. And I think what's going to be, everyone's going to be watching is what college football and what the NFL does, because they're going to keep a close eye on WNBA, the NBA, MLS, Major League Baseball to see, because the NFL wants to play. They want to play with fans, and college football, it just depends on the conferences. The Ivy League is talking about pushing, canceling the season, at least for the fall, and pushing it back into the spring.
Right.
And if that happens, you could see other leagues following suit, because it was the Ivy League that canceled the basketball tournament first. And then that led to other teams canceling, and then ultimately the NCAA basketball tournament was canceled. So I think it's going to be, again, I think these leagues are doing the best they can, but we don't know what's going to happen when it's all said and done.
Well, see, it's like I mentioned earlier in the broadcast. See, I asked the question, a little play on words here, does size matter? And clearly the endowment, not being endowed, let's clean it up, but the endowment of these Ivy League schools does make a difference. And see, this is why it kind of always boils back, whether it be social justice in terms of Black Lives Matter, racism, systemic racism, it always really boils back down to something that has one color is green, or in some cases gold and silver, but it has to do with money. Because here's the realities. Because Harvard does have, and the Ivy Leagues have such huge financial war chest, matter of fact, their teams don't even go to bowl games. So they don't even need the revenue. They don't have this huge group of scholarships that they pay out. Some schools still don't even offer a scholarship to just play a sport. They'll give you a scholarship for your education and you can play a sport, but they don't give it to you specifically for that sport. So you have a situation where these schools can make judgment purely on two issues: health and wellness of their students, and the potential PR fallout if a student was to come back to school and get sick and God forbid die. Because they know that, again, because they have the war chest and because the parents of those students have some serious firepower themselves, there's no way that they're going to risk that by saying we're going to try to force ahead of the season. So it's interesting how the schools that, again, have the best endowment, Morehouse, although the HBCU, they have the biggest endowment of any HBCU by far. So they don't, and plus, don't want to take a shot, but their programs, if anything, probably cost them money versus making them money. So they're like, hey, we're out of here. We're not going to do it. Safety of the students first. The economics, we don't need the money. And we don't need the PR nightmare if something happens to one of the students. So, I mean, that's the difference between other schools that, really need this money, especially mid-majors. Some of your mid-majors and those schools that are D1 and maybe outside the power conferences, that revenue that the football teams make, and in some cases the basketball team, they pay for all of the sports in the school. So it's a big deal. A big deal.
It really is. And I think with Morehouse and with the Ivy Leagues, you're going to see more teams. Depending on how everything goes, you're going to see more teams just or not playing this fall and maybe possibly pushing it back to spring if that's feasible. When the Spanish flu pandemic hit in 1918, there were a number of schools, way back, And, I actually did a story on how there was a picture from a Georgia Tech game where there was a bunch of fans just wearing a mask and during that pandemic. And Georgia Tech was one of the few schools that actually played somewhat of a full season. There were teams that didn't have a season at all. There were teams that started playing in late October, early November. So it could be something along the lines of that in terms of some of these smaller schools. They may have to delay their season, if not just canceling it altogether. College football is going to be the most interesting because of as many teams there are when it comes to Division I, FCS, Division II, and the Division III. Some of these schools might not be ready to have a full season or start the season on time because of the number of positive tests, because there's going to be positive tests in these next couple of weeks, these next couple of months. So it's going to be a question of what's the NCAA going to do? What are these conferences are going to do? Because again, as you mentioned, Ivy League doesn't have to worry about it because they can push things back until the spring because of the resources and the money that the schools bring in anyway without football. So I think in the NFL, if they had to push the season back, they can. They have that flexibility. I think for college, it's going to be interesting because there's going to be some big games that are going to be canceled, I think, at the start of the season. And if that happens, then what's going to happen going into early September, into late September, into October? Because if the pandemic is still an issue, or in terms of growing cases, then college football could be in a world of trouble.
Oh yeah, so there's no doubt. I mean, it's just you just again when this first started, my first gut reaction was nobody's gonna be able to play any sports in 2020, and everybody was like, "Oh, you're a big naysayer and a doomsday guy, and you're caught up with all the conspiracy stuff." But at the end of the day, you just look and you see the test. And again, here's the thing: we don't want to continue to stroke panic. The realities is like with any pandemic or epidemic, the majority of people don't die. Okay,
right.
Some 90% of the people have it, they recover. Some people get gravely ill, but a lot of people, like our mayor here in Atlanta, she's had the virus and she has shown virtually no symptoms. And she said her husband, the symptoms that he showed was basically, she said he was sleeping a lot, and they thought it was really tied to allergies. And a lot of people who are testing positive, they say it kind of feels like allergies. I got a scratchy throat, I'm fatigued, and that's pretty much it. None of the major problems that we've seen with having to go to ICU or be on a ventilator or anything like that. So I mean, at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that people are aware that most people that get COVID-19 do in fact survive and come back to everything normal, just if they had a bad case of the flu. But we don't want to diminish the fact that over 100,000 people have lost their lives to the COVID-19. That's why, unfortunately, every week we have to come on here on a sports show, and I can't talk to you about the numbers that I project that Matt Ryan might want to put up, or who I think is going to step in here and really be the new running back that's going to carry the load to really replace Devontae Freeman. I can't really talk about that. I can't talk about the fact that of which guy I might like, the fact that I think that they really don't use the players in the running back pool the way I would necessarily like, but I can't get into that because it's a constant conversation about COVID-19 and about social justice, but again, it's very important. I don't want to diminish that, but it really is amazing how these two issues have overshadowed the conversation everywhere, but especially in sports.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And when it comes to it, I remember when this all started on March 11th, when Rudy Gobert, the Utah Jazz, tested positive for COVID-19, and the NBA just decided to suspend the season because just everything that was happening at that time. And it led to more players testing positive, and then just a domino effect. You saw, Major League Baseball suspending their operations, minor league baseball not only suspending their operations, they're not having a season at all. And then, the NFL had to cancel their draft event in Las Vegas. They had to do it virtually. So this COVID-19 pandemic has been a major, had a huge effect on the sports world, and it looks like it's going to be that way for these next few months. The one thing you hope is these cases go down. And again, most people, and the majority of people, 99% of the people who have it are going to recover. Then they don't have to go to the hospital. And if these athletes get it, they can recover relatively quickly. But the players specifically, and it's interesting with baseball players and even with basketball players, they've talked about how they're not comfortable playing because of the pandemic. Freddie Freeman, his wife Chelsea, talked about how he contracted COVID-19, and it basically said that they were hunkered down in their home for the last 4 months. They didn't go out, they didn't hang out with friends, they didn't even go grocery shopping. It was just family at the home, but he still was able to get it. So, and that's what has led to players. A situation like that has led to players worrying about getting COVID-19 because they're just not thinking about themselves. They're thinking about their families, because you don't want your family members getting sick. Even though they're more likely going to recover, you don't want them to be sick because you don't know what's going to happen next. So it looks like, and we'll see what happens with MLS in terms of them starting their tournament on tomorrow, and we'll see what happens with Major League Baseball and the NBA starting their season in the next couple of weeks. But these leagues are going to do what they can to play, and you see it with NASCAR, you see it with UFC, you see it with soccer in Europe, that they have, and even baseball in Korea, that they've been playing games, and it looks like they haven't had too many issues. So it looks like that ultimately, I think that's what's going to happen, is these teams, these leagues will play, and there won't be that many issues. I think there may be some positive tests, but when it's all said and done, they'll be able to start and finish these seasons. And I think the same will go to college football and the NFL. So the pandemic is going to be an issue at least for the rest of this year. But ultimately, I think these leagues here in the United States will resume playing, and things will somewhat get back to normal.
And speaking of leagues, let's just pop this question up. I meant to get this up in the basketball section earlier, but there was some more news. Trae Young, our Atlanta budding superstar here, is signed with a new agency. And since he signed with the agency, it looks like he's kind of blowing up a little bit. He put out an interesting thing. He said, hey, we would like the idea of the 8 teams that weren't in this bubble, that they play in their own bubble. So that's the question. What do you think about Atlanta Hawks Trae Young wanting another bubble league for the 8 teams not invited to Florida? You think it's a good idea? You think it's going to get some traction? And really, how much muscle does it show that already he's exhibiting just in his going to his 3rd year in the league?
Yeah, I kind of like that, because at least for the Hawks, they need that experience. They need to play as many games as they can. Lloyd Pierce, the Hawks head coach, had talked about this. He was hoping that the Hawks and the other 7 teams would be part of the bubble simply because to just get that experience. Because the Hawks, as you know, they're just a really young team, and they just need that experience. And for Trae Young to, lead the way of having a possible bubble for these 8 teams, it just goes to show you what kind of star he has become in these last couple of years. Then, he is obviously the face of the Hawks. I think he is the biggest superstar this team has had ever since Dominique Wilkins, going into the late '80s, into the '90s, and he's a guy that could be one of the faces of the NBA in the next 5 years. So I would love to see it. I think NBA fans would love to see the young guys like Trae Young in action, and Hawks fans would like to see the entire team in action when it comes to Trae Young and John Collins and DeAndre Hunter and all those guys. So I think it's a really good idea.
Well, speaking of young guys making some noise, how about this fellow right here? Patrick Mahomes is now I believe he signed the most lucrative contract in sports history. 10 years, $450 million. Just under $500 million if we're counting pennies. So that's a big question. Do you think the Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes is worth that kind of dinero? $45 million a year for the next 10 years. What's your sensibility on that?
Based on what he's done the last 3 years, I do think he's worth that type of money. Normally when it comes to NFL players signing 10-year contracts, they don't work out. I know Donovan McNabb signed a 10-year contract when he was with the Eagles. Michael Vick signed a 10-year contract when he was in the Falcons, and ultimately they didn't end up in their careers playing with the Eagles and the Falcons respectively. But I think Mahomes is just different because based on, again, what he's done in 2018 when he was able to win the MVP, in 2019 he won the Super Bowl and win Super Bowl MVP, the Chiefs are making sure they have him locked up for the rest of his career. But and what's funny about it is, even if he's able to play he's locked up for 12 years. He'll be 35 years old once the contract is up, and they can ultimately do another deal because he's only 35 years old. And I think when it's all said and done, even though and when it comes down to it, with incentives, it can be up to a $503 million deal. It is kind of team friendly based on the way the contract plays out. So it all works out for the Chiefs. It's going to be interesting to see how they build around Patrick Mahomes. They have a good team. They're probably going to be the favorites to win the Super Bowl this year. But they wanted to make sure that they don't have to worry about signing him to another deal for the next decade. And I think it's a good idea because you see what other players that have signed, specifically Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, even Ryan Tannehill, not too long ago. The Chiefs wanted to make sure that Patrick Mahomes doesn't go anywhere. I'm pretty sure Mahomes wants to stay in Kansas City with Andy Reid as long as he's the head coach. But I think what's going to be interesting is what about the contracts for Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, even Lamar Jackson, how those contracts plays out. Because I don't know if it's likely they're going to sign 10-year deals, but if it's a 5 or a 6-year deal like quarterbacks normally sign for, how much would they get? Are you going to see them in the $35 million to $40 million range? Is it going to be on the same level as Patrick Mahomes if it was a 5 or 6-year deal? So I like what the Chiefs did. I do think Mahomes will be there with Kansas City until he's 35 years old, and I think he's able to sign a new deal. So I think it's good for the Chiefs, and they're going to be, I think because of this deal, they're going to be a Super Bowl contender for many years to come.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, man. I mean, if you look here, and I'm going to see if I can get these numbers up on the screen here because they are huge numbers here of Patrick Mahomes and what he has put up here in his 3 years. Let's see if we can get that up on the screen. Hopefully we'll be able to show that to our viewers here. And let's kind of slide over here so we can see that. Yep, there it is. You can see, guys, those are his numbers from footballreference.com, and you can see there's some huge numbers here. I'm going to take this banner down so you guys can see it. But huge numbers by Mahomes, especially those the 3 years he's been playing. I'm going to read those out for you for those who can't see him. First year as a rookie, obviously didn't play hardly at all, just played in one game. But in his second year, age 23, 16 games, led the Chiefs to a 12-4 record overall. Guy threw 50 touchdown passes, 50 to lead the league at age 23. 9.6 yards an attempt also led the league. Quarterback rating of 80.4 also led the league. Had an overall rating of 113.3 and threw for over 5,000 yards in just his second season. Of course, last year, even the stats went down, still threw for over 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, and a stunning just 5 interceptions for Patrick Mahomes. So there's no question that this young man has put up some yeoman numbers. And if he keeps up at this pace, obviously he would be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So the question really is who is this deal better for? Is it better for the Chiefs or better for Patrick Mahomes? When we think in our minds about $45 million a year, $450 million over the life of a contract, we think that's $500 million. But in fact, we saw that bar ratcheted up to some degree unnecessarily by the Redskins owner when they signed that huge deal with Kirk Cousins, where I believe it was like over $75 million was guaranteed. Well, that kind of set the bar. Here's you had a guy that had not won a playoff game, a guy I think only had 2 winning seasons on his to-do list to get that kind of money. Well, you're right. You got a guy that's 25 years old going into his next season. He's just won your Super Bowl, and he's playing a type of quarterback brand that is just dynamic. I mean, it's kind of like part Brett Favre, part Peyton Manning, just a gunslinger that can move around and throw the ball from any angle. So, yeah, I think that at the end of the day, some people are going to say the Chiefs got a good deal because, like you mentioned, 5-6 years from now, who knows what guys are being paid. But I think at some point, you're going to have some type of ceiling on what you're paying individual players because, the money at some point is not going to be worth anything. Are you going to pay a guy $100 million a year? You're going to pay him a $1 billion contract to play for 10 years? I mean, that's kind of almost where we're heading. So I think at some point, the owner's going to have to put the brakes on, especially with our economy making all of these changes where you're having more and more people not being able to afford to go to games. Yeah, I think it's going to be a big change. But no question, I think Patrick Mahomes did something sensible. Hey, the Chiefs took me when they already had basically a guy that's been in the Pro Bowl a couple of times in Alex Smith. They put me with a guy who is the offensive guru, and they've given me everything I needed to be to succeed, even allowed me to play the game I wanted to play it. So they never really reined him in, even though he did throw the ball running backwards behind his back, all kind of stuff like that. They never restricted him from doing that. They allowed him to be the best player he could be. So there's no question. I think that he made the decision. When I was a millennial, there was a guy by the name of Kirby Puckett, and also the guy named Cal Ripken Jr. Both of these guys got set up to sign their final contracts. And there were some teams like the Yankees and so forth trying to woo them away with big money. I always remember Kirby Puckett in the press conference. He said, listen, I played in Minnesota all my life, and Cal Ripken echoed the same thing. And with the kind of money I'm making already, I'm set. But this last contract is going to set me for life. How much money do I need? So that's really it. Listen, guys, we want to do this. Stay with us here on social media, all those of you watching it. But to all those of you on WIGO 1570, as you know, guys, we only have 1 hour. So we can't stay with you any more than 9 o'clock. Appreciate all you guys that have been listening here on WIGO 1570. Also on TuneIn Radio on the free application. If you don't have it downloaded, it's free. Put in WIGO in 1570 in the search engine, and voila, you can hear our broadcast every Tuesday night. Big shout out to brother minister Eli Smith. If you guys like gospel music, he does a great program Monday through Friday, except Wednesdays, 9 a.m. to 12 noon with the Eli Smith Show, playing all the latest and greatest in gospel hits, both old school, new school. You might even sneak an interview in every now and then, but check them out there on WIGO 1570. All right, guys, on 1570, God bless you and have a great night. For those of you on social media, don't go nowhere. Stay right here. We're going to take a quick little break again so you guys can take a peek at some of the nice people who have joined us here on the Real Talk Sports Show from time to time. We'll be back.
This is OJ Howard with Real Talk Sports.
What's up, guys? This is Tim Tebow. You're listening to Real Talk Sports.
This is Charles Woodson. Let me grab the mic. You ready? This is Charles Woodson with Real Talk Sports. Hey, it's your boy JB Smooth with Real Talk Sports.
All right, guys, you never know again who might pop in on the Real Talk Sports Show. We're so excited that all those guys we have interviewed over time on the Real Talk Sports Show, on red carpet, blue carpet, black carpet. And again, we thank God for all those of you who have done it. And again, one more time, big shout out to Eli Smith, a guy, like I said, again, that does some big stuff here for us on the station on WIGO 1570, Atlanta's Incredible Radio. Follow us on social media at WIGOAM 1570. Remember, you can follow me personally. I'm going to pop it up here one more time. Boys and girls, you can follow me personally or with the show. You got a choice. I'm on most social media platforms. We even now are on TikTok. Don't ask me why, Brian, but we're on TikTok. We really are. But you won't be seeing me doing too many challenges. But that's follow me on social media at Minister J Sim. I do an inspirational program every Wednesday and Sunday. Wednesday it's at 9:30 a.m. It's called the Clarion Call Broadcast. I try to bring some biblical truths to modern day problems that we have right now and do something a little bit similar on Sunday morning called Preaching in the Park. I used to actually do it in the park, but the COVID be lurking out there now. So, but eventually I will be getting back out there as well. So again, you can follow me, guys. You can see it right there on the screen at Minister J Sim or at Real Talk Sports 7. So appreciate all those of you who do that. And again, big shout out to all of you who are watching the replay right now on Periscope. Appreciate all those of you who are watching on your various groups, fan pages from the Falcons, from the Hawks, from the Braves. We appreciate you, and even some of the Christian-based pages, Christian Networking, Urban Professionals, Black Enterprise. We appreciate all you guys because it's from you sharing the broadcast and allowing me to broadcast this live that we're able to do what we do. So again, we appreciate all of those of you, who have been watching and listening to the broadcast. Well, we're going to keep it right here with football. We talked about the big contract, obviously, of Patrick Mahomes, $450 million. We also want to ask the question here, which is now one I kind of understand, but I'm not sure if it's needed. Sometimes, we talk about you're doing too much. The NFL has decided that they're going to play the Negro National Anthem. That's going to be played at any NFL game. So, question to you folks is, do you think that's something that should be played? What's your thoughts about that? Is that really necessary? Brian, what you think?
I don't necessarily think it's something that the NFL needs to do. As long as I think ultimately what the players want is the NFL showing support for the Black Lives Matter movement. Not too long ago, I think it was back in June, a group of NFL players, specifically Tyrann Mathieu, Deshaun Watson, Saquon Barkley, Odell Beckham, they came out with a video addressing the NFL and just talking about how they should be more supportive of the Black Lives Matter movement. And then Roger Goodell came out with his response saying that they were wrong, how they'd been treating the protests during the national anthem, specifically when Colin Kaepernick was in the NFL back in 2016. And they were all about the Black Lives Matter movement. A Negro National Anthem, I kind of get it in the sense that they want to support the black football players in the NFL, but I just think it's something that's not necessarily needed. I think they should just be more respectful of the players if they are going to protest for the Black Lives Matter movement, because Adrian Peterson has talked about how there's going to be a group, more than a bunch of players, that are going to be protesting during the national anthem this upcoming season in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. And there have been some coaches who are all about kneeling with the players. There are even reports that Roger Goodell might kneel with the players if he goes to an NFL game. So I think ultimately that's what the NFL players want. They just want to raise awareness of racial and social injustice, something that Kaepernick was doing 4 years ago, and the NFL being more mindful and more respectful to those players who are protesting. So I don't think the Negro National Anthem is very necessary.
Yeah, I kind of think we're doing too much with that one. I see. To me, here's what happens. See, what I think at some point it moves beyond an honest attempt to try to address the needs, and it gets to more like pandering and just trying to do things to basically make people be quiet. And what it shows me is, and it showed the players, the power now that players have. They realize that the kind of money that we're making personally. So, before, if you go back 30 years ago when players used to have strike, that was a big deal for players to have a strike because they had to have basically strike funds, because you have players only making, in the NFL, $40,000 or $50,000. These backup players, so they couldn't afford to be off the field. So players had to pitch in. Now, I think the minimum salary in the NFL just was raised. I want to say it's right around $600,000 or $700,000 for your minimum salary. So your average guy is making $1 million plus a year. Well, now he can afford to say, you know what, I'm going to take time off away from the field. I'm going to get involved with protests and things like that. And the NFL is aware of that. The other thing too is these TV contracts are ginormous, and they create so much money for the teams that they have to make sure that they have a product on the field. So I think some of this stuff is just them trying to make the players be quiet and just play. I mean, not all of it, but some of it, even our corporations, the same thing. It's just, hey, man, we want this thing to go away. We're coming out of a pandemic. We've lost all kinds of money. We're looking at potential, lack of fans in the seats. We need a product.
Yeah, it just seems like the NFL is trying to prove that they're very supportive of Black Lives Matter movement. And, again, I understand that what they're trying to do here, but it's just a little too much. And as I mentioned, I think just admitting that they were wrong about how they treated the protest to start off with, I think that's a start right there. And the fact that they acknowledge the players with their video, specifically Roger Goodell, I think that's what these players want, and they do want more. And I think some players have asked Roger Goodell to apologize to Kaepernick for everything that he's done, and even Seattle Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll, he's talked about how much Kaepernick has lost based on what he's done during this time. So, again, this anthem is just a little too much. And again, as you mentioned, Jonathan, it might just be something to where they just want it to go away. But it's not something that's necessarily going to go away, because this is something that's been on the players' mind for basically for the last 4 years, if not longer. But again, they just want the players want the NFL just be more supportive, but kind of like what the NBA has done with their players. I think they've done a pretty good job addressing the racial and social injustice that's going on in the country. And LeBron James, the fact that he's been criticized for speaking out, but at the same time, you need someone like that speaking out against the racial and social injustice in this country, because people will listen. And I think for the NFL, they have a bunch of players that have spoken out, and they just want the NFL just to be more supportive. And I think, again, this national anthem is unnecessary, but the fact that they're starting to show that they're more supportive is a start.
Yeah, I think, like I said again, I don't want in any way diminish the great impact that these players and young people in general have done to move the needle, because the realities are, as much as nobody likes to, see a lot of discord in the society, the realities are is that in order for change to come, people are going to be uncomfortable if there's confrontations. That's just the way things work in order to get things to change. And the fact that there have been real tangible laws passed, there have been corporations saying we're going to change even logos that we've had for years, that we finally have a consideration where a team that basically has made billions of dollars off of using a particular name of a team, the Redskins. I mean, the Redskins have been around for 80 years using that name, and they've sold tons and tons of pounds of merchandise, billions of dollars of sales of Redskin merchandise. And now they're saying, okay, we are now willing finally to say we are willing to unravel all that and unpack that and be willing to suffer whatever loss to change the name of the team. Now, me personally, I put it up on social media a couple of times. I think it's a real simple thing. They're making this thing too hard. They should change the name to the Washington Warriors. And what they should do is go with the old school. Let me see if I got a picture I can pop up here. They had the old school helmet. They would do this every now, a retro helmet. But Redskins back in the 70s, it's their throwback jersey now. They used to wear the gold pants, burgundy jerseys, and a gold helmet with a red R on the side of the helmet. Well, to me, just take that same helmet and put a W on it. They brought that same sensibility back a few years ago, where they did the same thing. They updated the logo, but they made the helmet burgundy. Same thing. You're going to make a ton of money because everybody likes new. So new unis, everybody wants to go out and have the new unis. So to me, just change the name to the Washington Warriors. You can even keep the same mascot. You don't have to change them. I mean, because you're basically saying that we're supporting a Native American warrior. That's a good thing. That's why the Kansas City Chiefs. You hear nobody talking about, hey, change the name of the Chiefs, right?
Oh
No.
yeah.
So to me, just change the name to the Warriors. Don't make it something that's so far away from the current name that you lose the vitality of the team. Not the vitality, but kind of the essence of the team. I don't agree with that. But again, the Warriors seem to me to be a great and simple way to do it. You also honor the fact that Native Americans, these Warriors went out and they got food for their families. In some cases, they had to fight encroaching and poaching white settlers. I get that. But at the end of the day, in most cases, they were doing it to protect their own land because the folks that came over here did not belong here. The original immigrants. I'm just saying, nobody wants to talk about that. But there were people living here when we assigned settlers to somebody else's land. It wasn't our land. Okay, there was no United States of America. Okay, guys. So, I don't want to get into politics of this all, but we got to be real about this. So again, if you want to honor the people like the Chiefs do, they have a Native American chief. He's a leader of his nation. A warrior is considered a leader of his nation. It's a sign of manhood. So I'm all for that. So if they can do that, and guys, you Redskins fans that listen, that's going to be an easy fix. I'll post it up again on social media if you like. So no problem. Well, guys, as always, the time gets away from us. We're about to wrap it up here. Just a few more minutes here on social media. For those of you who just dropped into the broadcast, you're saying, what is this? This is the Real Talk Sports Show. I'm your host, the Minister Jonathan Simmons. I got with me the guy that knows all about both pop culture and sports, Brian Jones, in the building. He's with popculture.com. He is a longtime contributor to our show. Love to have him on because he breaks it down in a way which is easy for you guys to understand it, with all the things that how pop culture and sports is intertwining more and more each and every day. So we appreciate Brian for dropping in here and hanging out with us here on our show after the show.
Yep. Yeah, it's always great to be here, Jonathan. And for those who don't know anything about pop culture, you can go to popculture.com on all the latest trending and entertainment news. And for me, I'm the trending sports writer. You can go to popculture.com/sports. It's all part of the CBS Sports Network, or the CBS Digital Network, I should say,
Right.
which is merged with CBS recently merged with Viacom. So it's now this big network. You're talking about Paramount, Nickelodeon, BET, Entertainment Tonight.
BET.
Yep,
That's right.
Exactly. So yeah, be sure to check out popculture.com for the latest trending entertainment news, and for sports and entertainment news, go to popculture.com/sports.
Well, guys, you heard it right there. So, again, for those of you who are, don't get me wrong, BET had a great BET Awards, but BET is no longer black owned. Okay, so we might need to have another BET pop out because they're not black owned anymore. They're saying they're owned by Viacom, which I don't know. Viacom, that conglomerate, I guess, is partially foreign owned, if I'm not mistaken. They're not completely an American company, if I'm not mistaken, Brian. You might have to clarify that for me, but I think Viacom.
I have to check on that. But yeah, I
Right.
think that's right.
So
Yeah, I'm not
they ain't
sure.
even American.
Yeah, it might be true.
I'm just saying, boys. So again, we appreciate everybody who is locked in onto the broadcast. Appreciate you as you dropped in here. I haven't used this in a long time because they let us out for a while. But for those of you who don't know where we are in the lockdown living room. And that's where we do our broadcast here. And we bring our guests on. We want you to join us in the living room next week. Brian, again, we thank you so much. Thank everybody who's been watching the broadcast. You know, the minister has to do my appeal as I do every week. Hey, if you don't know the Lord Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, you need to get to know Him, ma'am. And you say, why is that? Even you, sir. Because nobody, absolutely nobody, loves you like Jesus. Not your mom, not your auntie, not grandmama and them. Nobody loves you like Him. Two reasons. Why He made you, He died for you, and He's waiting with you, open arms. And your relationship with Him ensures a couple of things. One, a life well lived here on the earth. Not problem free, but a life well lived. And when you leave here, you escape the bad place. And nobody wants to go there. Everybody wants to go up and not down. All right, guys, you be safe, everybody. Brian, thanks so much for joining us. Again, kudos and shouts out to those who listen to us on WIGO 1570. We appreciate you so much, and we thank God for you. I think we had a couple of quick comments here on social media. So before we wrap up, let's bring those out here from Facebook. Chris Trees wants to know what happens to MLB players' salaries if they decide not to play this year. Brian, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I got that message from Chris. We've done some work together, but he's specifically talking about Felix Hernandez and Nick Markakis. And from what I understand is because they're opting out and they're not playing because of health-related issues, they're not going to get paid what their contract allows them to for this upcoming season. I'm going to double check on that, but because they're opting out of the 2020 season, they're not going to get paid.
Gotcha. You mean they can't qualify for that Corona thing, like your paycheck protection? They can't get that?
Maybe. I think, from what I understand, I think it was Mark Bowman from Braves.com that mentioned this, but from what I understand, if it was something where, like, if Freddie Freeman, like, because he's diagnosed, contracted COVID and he can't play for an extended period of time, I think he still gets paid the full salary for 2020. But because of Markakis and Felix Hernandez opting out, I don't think they're going to get paid their salary for 2020.
That makes sense. One other comment here from social media guy that we're going to have on the show sometime later this week. We're going to do another show because one of the things is I want to give a big shout out to people who are trying to support the quote unquote blackout. So we're going to do something here. You guys know that most of the people that come on our show are African American, but we are actually going to do a focus for the next few weeks on bringing on the guys that you may not know. All of us don't work for ESPN. We're like Brian, even though he's affiliated with CBS, he's with popculture.com. Obviously, I'm at realtalksports.net. This gentleman here that popped up on Periscope, I don't know if he's still there. He calls himself That Dude Easy, but we know him as the Hawks Beat. Mr. Edwin, we appreciate you so much and all that you do. We hope to have him on. Some of the other guys like DNA Sports Talk and guys like that. So we're excited about bringing guys onto the show that are really kind of the small black media that we have here in Metro Atlanta, and we're going to bring some guys from other areas as well. So guys, keep it locked right here. And remember, follow Brian Jones. That's Brian L. Jones. Don't get confused with those other Brian Jones. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah. Brian, again, man, we appreciate you so much, man, and God bless.
Always a pleasure, Jonathan. God bless, and thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. All right, buddy. Have a great night. Until we see you again next week. You've been listening to the Real Talk Sports Show and watching the Real Talk Sports Show here on realtalksports.net, and follow us anywhere on social media at Real Talk Sports 7. All right, buddy. God bless you and good night.